Welcome back to the Horseshoe. It has been a while since the Buckeyes have played at home. It's been a while since the Pregame Keys have been back in Ohio Stadium. He's Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. The Buckeyes play at noon, homecoming against Nebraska, and Lathan Ransom, as expected, as we've suggested all week, will not play at safety.
It's a loss for Ohio State. It's, you go back to that Oregon game, which we're not going to talk about anymore.
We're done with that.
It's time to move forward. But you try not to make too big of a deal about the loss, but then you're like, there's all these other little losses that pile up on top of a game like that, because for the first time all year, you're playing a team that's physically your equal, and they hit harder and things go a little bit more aggressive. And so you're going to be without Josh Simmons. You're going to be without Will Kazmarek. You're going to be without Lathan Ransom. That's 3 starters for Ohio State, a team that has been exceptionally healthy all year long. Now has to shuffle some pieces around. I'm very interested to see how Lorenzo Styles, who again we continue to think is the guy that will start in Lathan Ransom's spot, how he adapts to the back part of the defense as opposed to the slot. But this is a Nebraska team I don't think is going to really challenge you that deep down the middle of the field that often. So it's really about how Lorenzo Styles works in the run fits, and that's going to be the interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, Ryan Day sort of lumped about 5 guys together. It's a reminder of how valuable Lathan Ransom is and the number of things that he can do for Ohio State defensively. But, he has talked about Lorenzo Styles, Jalen McClain, an opportunity potentially for Malik Hartford in that group as well. Jermaine Matthews, what that means if they're shuffling around some pieces there with, Jordan Hancock at nickel as well. And then talking about Arvell Reese in the base package and what that may mean. You're talking about Nebraska and Penn State in the next 2 games that are going to want to be physical up front and run the football primarily, even though they have quarterbacks with some name recognition in Dylan Raiola. And we'll get to Drew Aller next week. But, this is going to be a game that we've said all week is going to rely not just on the defensive front, and what changes can be made, but that front 7, because I think probably what's going to happen is you're maybe going to see less of that nickel today.
Probably, because Nebraska has to run the ball. That's key. I mean, key number 1 is always stop the run, but Nebraska's offense, as I said on weekend kickoff, has been really, really bad the last few weeks. They are putting way too much on Dylan Raiola right now, more than they did at the beginning of the season, and we're seeing the results bear out that way, that when you have a true freshman quarterback who gets into the Big Ten, things start to move a little faster. He's been very, very inefficient for Nebraska the last 3 weeks. In the stadium today, which right now, here we are, it's about 2.5 hours, 3 hours before kickoff. It's pretty dead. It's
not quite the same vibe as Iowa when we say, hey, come on down.
Yeah. It's not going to stay that way, though. Buckeyes fans will start piling. It is a little chilly this morning. It's like 40 degrees as we record this.
Feels great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful 40 degrees, but it's still 40 degrees nonetheless. And people look at their phones and let's wait a half hour. So they're waiting a half hour probably. But Nebraska's going to try to take things off of Dylan Raiola's plate today. That means Arvell Reese, I think, to me, like when you're talking about the first keys of the game, it is the Ohio State linebackers. All the talk all week's been about the defensive line and pressure. Now you're talking about Lathan Ransom. But to me, can the linebackers tackle where they get a first opportunity to tackle someone? And can they do a good enough job covering Thomas Fedone, who is Nebraska's leading pass catcher? They're probably the biggest threat down the field is their tight end. Player Ohio State recruited, a player that is really, really good. So it's a big day for Sonny Styles, Cody Simon, and Arvell Reese, just making sure that Nebraska has to get one-dimensional.
Yeah, Ohio State's going to have to rely on their tight ends to get some stuff done today, too, probably with the run blocking and helping out there in the transition with Zen Mahalski taking over at left tackle. We'll see if there's anything lingering for Tiger Shabola or Austin Saribold, what could happen at right guard there. But when Ohio State is trying to run the football, we're trying to find some of the passing threats over the middle of the field the way they did with G. Scott or Will Kazmarek on that opening drive against Oregon. It feels really like an opportunity for Bennett Christian to take the next step in his career overall, but just in a head-to-head matchup with Nebraska, he's going to be critical just for one day for starters. So it is interesting that Will Kazmarek is not carrying the season-ending designation on his injury. It's encouraging. If that's, a month-long recovery time, that'd be really good for Ohio State at the end of the year. Josh Simmons does have that. He is out for the year officially, according to Ohio State. Ryan Day had said that. Initially danced around it, confirmed that on Tuesday, but that's now written down as well. The only other scholarship player that's out is Aaron Scott on defense. But I do think that, for me, I'm looking more at the tight ends. Maybe I always do that, but Bennett Christian, Jelani Thurman, staying late after practice on Wednesday, you've made a point that he needs to maybe take that challenge upon himself to to grow and become an all-around tight end and be a physical blocking presence more than just a target they can throw out there at tight end. So easy for me to say. But tight ends, I think, are going to be key here, and Zen Michalski will be watching him closely as well.
It's simple. I mean, it's football, but I'm gonna zoom out.
Zoom out.
And I do think, and again, this is just the way I feel. I may be wrong. Ohio State needs to bring their own juice today. Like it feels like it's gonna be a little bit of a sleepy day here in Ohio Stadium. Nebraska coming off a 56-7 loss at Indiana. Ohio State fans still suffering a little bit of the hangover from the Oregon game. The Buckeyes are going to need to bring it, and I think that starts early and often with the passing game. I think you're going to see Will Howard early in this game take a couple shots. Ryan Day was, I think he was joking, talking about launching balls earlier this week, but I do think it's important to establish to Nebraska early what Mike Bennett and Zach Boren said on Thursday night. You do not belong on this field with us. We watched you just get boat raced by Indiana. You're going to get boat raced today. So for me, the Ohio State offense coming out, scoring early. If the Buckeyes don't score on that first drive of this game, I really do have a feeling like the stadium's going to be like, "Nah, man."
Putting it all on the opening drive.
Yeah, I think it's important. Ohio State has to get the bad taste of that Oregon game out of their mouth right away, whether that's making sure they're off the field on their first drive defensively and scoring on their first drive offensively. You got to set the tone very, very early because the crowd needs to know that you're back.
I might feel you're not wrong to suggest.
Of course I'm not. I'm always right.
I think it's more important for Ohio State to get the first stop rather than score like the first time they touch the football. They should. I mean, Indiana scored 56 points on this team a week ago. Ohio State should be able to move the ball up and down the field on them. The last time they played, they scored 31 points despite some of those injuries against the number one team in the country on the road. I don't have any real doubts about Ohio State's ability to score. And if they didn't do it on the opening drive, I think they'd probably bounce back pretty quickly and score enough points to win this game. But where that feeling may be more real, what you're talking about, deflation in the stadium, maybe even some nervousness on the sideline, is if they go out and Nebraska takes it down the field on them, because then you're like, well, spent 2 weeks trying to find things corrected. Ryan Day's been involved in defensive meetings. That's where I think maybe the angst could come in, because Ohio State has been scoring enough points to win these games, and they probably will today. But that would be sort of the moment I think it's more pivotal for them to get an opening stop than a score.
Why not both?
Okay. Well, that would probably be helpful. Yeah. What's key number 3?
Key number 3 for me is, as always, again, sometimes I feel like we repeat ourselves in these shows because there are tried and true cliches about football. You got to run the football. You got to come out with the Zen Michalski replacing Josh Simmons, who I saw Josh Simmons was projected on Friday. I think it was an ESPN.com NFL draft article, which had him as the number 1 picked offensive tackle in the draft prior to his injury.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, I thought he was moving up the boards. I don't know that I would have had him that high, but there was a lot of very positive buzz. Zen Michalski is going to be in the spotlight today, whether he likes it or not, and he's going to have an opportunity to calm a lot of nerves or set people on fire, essentially, because there's going to be a lot of folks who, if he doesn't come out in his 4th year in the program, look like a guy that belongs on the field as a starter for Ohio State, who are going to just absolutely panic. And so I think it's kind of on Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins to make sure that when they have an opportunity for 5 yards, they get it. It doesn't always have to be an 80-yard run. We saw Travion Henderson, who's been great all year, 2 separate times in Eugene, where he had a chance to just get what they needed and tried to do something bigger and didn't get it. That was symbolic to me of a guy that had moved past that, or I thought he'd moved past that, and he didn't seem like he was seeing it against Oregon. That's a tough environment. This is a friendly environment. So I think it's really important for Travion and Quinshon to, it sounds weird, but to help the offensive line by taking what is there for you and not trying to hit home runs every single swing.
Yeah, I think we'd said, through the first 5 games, I talked about how impressed I'd been with Travion Henderson with the vision being better, some of the cutback lanes that we, right over here.
Yeah, I don't want to be critical. He had 2 50-yard run, or a 30-yard run and a 50-yard run in that game. But
the point is that we saw him doing some things that had been one of his weaknesses in the first couple of years in the program, relying maybe too much and thinking that his athleticism, like he's back in high school and can run away from everyone. Against a team like Oregon, he couldn't do that, and it cost Ohio State on just again, 1 or 2 plays,
Yeah,
but those
3rd and 1's pivotal plays.
But those made the difference, and certainly are going to make the difference in talent-equated games. I don't believe that that's what this is today, but it is an opportunity that Travion Henderson has to get back on track. You know that Quinshon Judkins, whether the hand injury caused the fumble, I don't know if there's anything he could have done about the play that Harmon made on him, but he's going to want to go prove something as well. He wasn't really involved in the second half of that game in a way that he would want to or expects to be. So both of those guys have a lot to prove. So does, obviously Zen Michalski does as well. So this is a game more than anything that's going to come down to the trenches, and that is a cliche on the Pregame Keys just about every week. But as you said, it's because it's true. And we made it to the end without really talking about the defensive line, because I think everybody already knows.
I think we've said enough. If that defensive line doesn't show up today in the way that people expect it to, oh boy.
Well, we're going to find out soon. Thank goodness.
When you have a true freshman quarterback like Dylan Raiola, who has shown in the last 3 weeks he's more than willing to give the ball to the other team.
He's generous.
If you're not watching the film, that's a problem. Okay? The film is there. Let's just say that. So if you are watching your opponent's film, then you will know what works against them. Right? So watch the film and pressure the quarterback.
Boy, you said a mouthful there, Berm, but we'll save some of that for another day.
Watch the film.
Watch the film and watch Ohio State and Nebraska. Noon. Big noon on Fox. Don't miss it. Thanks for joining us for the Pregame Keys on the podcast. He's Berm. I'm Austin. We'll see you after the game for some snap judgments. Bill Landis will be here. We'll have the notebook. We'll have full coverage coming your way from whatever happens here on homecoming. Enjoy it. See ya.